Lana meba lada menangi temba sanje shimden. Pejawa shaja tuba la cha zeno judo jazuchi. Temba jumden den di shin sheba jashamba yanda. Zobe sanje riba dan shabzun temba devare sheba. Jiden chemba jibun dube kalo juba lana me. Tada menangi temba sanje shimden den pejawa. Shaja tuba la cha zeno judo jazuchi. Kanze kanyo zowa jatam zeya sajen dena. Nane jiden de na choje song de ze ke ba chuma cha. Namda kunga chodo su sawa yishi ja so se je no. Chaban jiden som na la me ba gombo chonye chuma cha. Chenjo den ba chimen da we she sen don da wa chuma cha. Le je je na se ba so man je nyame jen jen chuma cha. Gombo tu je je den ba thon je jen ba den ba so no me ye de ja. Di shen shen la cha zelo tabian de sha che wan ju ge wen ge ji de de na me chong yu wa xin ju ju la cha chen ne zhe ban la ye de la wa da la da de ne xin ge dang ba yin de gen de la ya cha zelo di wa ji yan mi sha ge wa be zong zong wa je rang ge sen de yo zo de de ne san ge de ka ma ra ri ma me da ju ma se ba chu bo da me long lo da de de je je no de de da so no de ye tam je se ba Kobandam ne jinjen da de ngada na ta shiva na tu sibe so ne do wan do wa re sho
the teacher and the blessed one whom beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to attain, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate and make offerings and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate and make offerings and go for refuge. When a supreme among humans you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides that said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then I prostrate. With pure bodies formed supremely pure, wisdom motion like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, to you I prostrate. With the supreme science face like a spotless moon, color like the gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Teacher having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you the one gone to thusness I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that Dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community intending virtue I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from the ocean of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death. I go for refuge in telling enlightenment to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge in telling enlightenment to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge in telling enlightenment to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Lama Tsongkapha mena jedemba sanje jumdende zo deshin shebate sonam dagi judemba gebe zawana ma chume zo sebera doji sonam jetere nam jeshi peje sambo nam jete chanam jembe doji jeyu remba de tona medemba meba tebe meba nam sherbe sije tamna manziba sinje tamje jedemba chanju semba nam je yabu pabe kazana je jebo Yangan de Roger and Rovan get the Shepard of Bogasum. So number of Yanyan Boguja of the Chomich, put some one the water. So that when you want my river, so me water than the Tungan and the Pumbo than the Come down with them by Jason Namon, the one and Shield, Yozo, water than the Sivale to a show and give a Yozo, the one there was a margin, but Sanjay Jimden, Yishan, never, young and the development. Yanda one you get on the Sinja Tomjala Siva Sana Shubat. The Dania Sanjay Jimden, the Jukuchi, the Yanda one Tabijan, Tomago, Patuki, Tamagi. There are some more centers about Mandebo, Yozo, Chawa, Yanda, them, Tucheva. Yavadem, Deton, the Tenyo, Kevan, the Jungle. Kevan, the Sozo, and the River, Jimden, the Jana was the one of them. Rachel Tobe Sanjudo, Dravacheva, Medemba, Major Devata, Temba Yuba, Tavachimberg in the Leverage of Rivership, Tabriship, Tubership, Tomaja, Charge of a residue, Sona Jebe, Singing Years of Jibenda, Kundo and Jibenda, Zuju, Chimbo, Kangi, Dension, Government, Jimmy, Chibamba, Tomba, Homer, Tade, the Median, Giovanni, Jessedama, Zola, Sonyaman. So today I think 275 page. It's the merit of how cause and effect become most tenable. So previously Lama Tsongkapha mentioned that the emptying and the intrinsic nature is not only objectively, even in conventionally. So both conventional and ultimate intrinsic nature or intrinsic existing has to be empty at all time. So now that does not mean it's emptying intrinsic nature objectively or conventionally is not going to annihilate the conventional reality. So the conventional reality is the basis for the generating compassions, renunciations, perfection of the generosities, the patience, moralities, all this accumulation merits is based on this conventional reality. So it is
how merit of how cause and effect become most tenable. So this is why Mind-only school, Chandrakirti school, they all try to find the basis for the continuum of the karmic actions and the consequences of the karma. Right? So that some says, oh, there's a mind basis of all, or some says, oh, this is the sixth mental consciousness, or something that sometimes this is Vivasika schools, non-dissipations, like a bank slit, or some Vivasika school they call prapti. So they're all trying to make sense that law and cause and effect is always, so it's always exists and very, very important. So you see, emptying the intrinsic nature, so both objective, ultimate, and conventional, but the conventional reality is always there, So the merit of how cause and effect become most tenable, this has three parts. Someone who does not assert intrinsic existence, like Prasangika school, need not accept the foundational consciousness. So the Prasangika school, there's no need to claim there is a mind basis or the foundation consciousness, because they can, without propounding the mind basis of all, they can they can understand how the law and the cause are functioning in the conventional, relatively. So the second, the illustrating by analogy how effect comes into being from the cessation of actions. So the analogy is the effect, how an effect comes from comes into being from the cessation of the actions. So this is all Prasangika school standpoint. Because the Prasangika school, asserts that the cessation or the disintegrations or the exhaustions of any conditional things is still a functional. It is not a non-existence. So rejecting objection to these presentations. So this all three parts in the Prasangika school standpoint. Someone who does not assert the intrinsic existence need not accept the foundational consciousness. The first has three parts, explaining the commentary transitional passage. And the second, the number two, explaining the meaning of the word of the root text. Number three, the discussing the related issues arising from this. So explaining the commentary transitional passage, the commentary states, in this way, because things do not have intrinsic existence on the level of both truth, conventional and ultimate truth. So one casts the view, eternalism, nihilisms far away because of the empty of intrinsic natures. So not only that, it becomes tenable to maintain the karmic acts, even if committed long before, remain connected to their effect without conceiving such notion as the foundation consciousness or mental continuum, a non-correlation, right? And the obtainment. So then here the Chandrakirti states that for the standpoint with no intrinsic existence, not only is there the merit of casting eternalist and nihilist view far away, there is also the merit of the complete tenability of connecting karma and its effect without having resort to notion like foundation, consciousness, and so on. So this whole, schools are concerning, because when they talk about 3 times the Suthantic school, Vivasika school, and the mind-only school, they all say that the past and the future is non-exist. Only exist is the present. Existing is the present. The past and the future is non-exist. So why they say that is, once things had born and exist, and once the thing that is already ceased, disintegrated, and that is the, things that become non-existence. Once that is yet to be born is still considered a non-existence. So what exists is the present. The Prasankhya school say even the present is based on the past and the future. Present year is based on months to come, months that is already ceased. So counting all of them, and the present year happened, right? The present day is the many of the hours that is already passed, the hours to come, and based on that, and there's a present day. Without past and the futures, there is no present. If the present is based on the past and the futures, so, then how can you think the past and the futures are non-existing? How non-existing, the base of non-existing become existing? Something exists from non-existence, right? So therefore, Prasankhya school thinks the past, things that already ceased, that very cessation is existing, and it is the time, and it is the function of things. One that is not yet born, yet to become, is existing. It is the time, So not necessarily exists in the present time. So therefore, our future Buddha exists. And also the future hell being is also exist. Sometimes there's a hell boy. So that's the commentary, from the tradition of the interpreting the treatise of the noble Nagarjunas comes these unique interpretations, whereby one can still possess all the effective transactions of the world, even though not even in the tiniest particle of intrinsic reality exists. So noble Nagarjunas presenting the cause and effect. Even there is no tiniest particle of intrinsic qualities, so they can constitute, yes, relatively something can exist without any intrinsic quality, any intrinsic base. I think the best thing that comes to my mind is easily like east and west. The directions. Directions is not really based on any substantial, not based on any specific thing. It just once you construct in your mind there is the west, and that become the basis for the east to exist. So once you construct the concept of east, that is become the basis for the west to exist. So there is no there is no substantial base, but it's relatively exist. So the base on this approach, many perfect tenets emerge that unique compared to other commentator, right? Mm-hmm. What are these tenets? For now, here are the principal ones. Rejecting the foundation's consciousness that is separate from the sixfold class of consciousness. So, Prasangika school, the minority school thinks that, karma that is you have committed in the past is no longer exist. It's karma that has become, once it passed, it's not exist. So then the karma, while it is the functioning, it goes the potential, it remains potential within the mind basis of all, the foundation of the consciousness. Mm-hmm. So therefore, in the karma, when it ceases to exist, become non-existing, but the potential still restored mm-hmm. Within the mind basis of all. So their main concern is to hold on that law in cause and effect. They are very worried about, their viewpoint is may reject the law in cause and effect. So they come to, maybe you can say the propounding there is the eighth consciousness, the mind basis of all. So Prasangika school says rejecting that mind basis all, which is separate from the sixfold of the consciousness. Eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mental consciousness, and then the consciousness of grasping, and then the mind basis all. So Prasangika school, in the Prasangika school, they reject this kind of the concept, the mind basis all, because they don't need, they don't need. So the Prasangika school thinks anything that ceases to exist is the functional things. It can produce the effect. It's very true that because once you say the past, 3 times divided in the past, future, and the present. So all of them are time. If the time, has to be exist, right? If the past does not exist, and one time does not exist, if the future does not exist, you have another second time. You only have one time. How can you say 3 times? You know? So number 2, a unique method of refuting the reflexive awareness, self-cognition. So the mind-only school, again, they think that each perception, like eye consciousness, while it is perceiving or, the apprehending the object, the shape or the color, at the same time, there is another consciousness which is closely watching to the eye consciousness itself.
Is that because I've heard the phrase sometimes, like, or the metaphor, like a sword cutting itself? Does that sound familiar? Or a sword
So
cutting
that's the guide to the Bodhisattvas.
Mm-hmm.
This is the guide to the Bodhisattva. Shantideva is how he rejects the self-reflexive, reflexive awareness or the self-cognitions. So the mind, Shantideva says, like one sword cannot cut itself. So like consciousness is not really looking and explicitly not looking itself. So when the consciousness perceive the object, when they experience the object, by experiencing object, that kind of, that will lead you to remember the subject and object both in the future. So you don't need the another, consciousness, which is, explicitly experiencing only the subject part, right?
Is that because I've also heard that, and then I've also heard the other explanation about how the other one is like there's a flame and how a flame produces its own light, and I'm not sure if that's an explanation of how that would be like this reflexive self-awareness. It almost, like, I've heard these two and it sounds like they're kind of different. Like a sword can't cut itself. Oh, but like a flame produces and enlightens, like lights its own self.
So the flame illuminates itself and others.
Mm-hmm.
They say, the mind-only school says,
Okay.
the flame illuminate, right?
Right.
Itself and others. So the consciousness, each consciousness, attached with another consciousness, which is just experiencing the consciousness itself.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why they kind of insist on that is because when you see something and then later on you remember the object, because you have already, already perceived that object in the past, therefore you remember. So next is you also remember the consciousness, how you experience, and then that one's who has perceived what subject that perceived, that the subject side. You remember the subject and the object both. The object because you have earlier you have perceived, therefore you remember, right? And how can you remember the subject that I have seen that? So the mind-only school says, therefore the self-cognizance has to be there. Otherwise, there's no way you can remember. You can only remember this object, but not remembering, that you have experienced it, you have perceived that. And the Prasangika school says, one example is the bear, they hibernate, the 6 months or many long time. Mm-hmm. And then when the mice or the rat that comes, they bite on the bear. So while they're biting, they only feel it. They don't really do anything. So then after the winter pass, the bear wake from that hibernate. And he also remember not only the mouse has bit on him, that poisoned him. So now when he was sleeping, he only experienced the bit, right? But he don't remember. There is no any consciousness that this mouse has poisoned me.
Mhm.
But when he awake, he also remember at the time that he was bit, that poisoned. So the Prasangika school said, then how can you say that, you also remember, you got poisons.
Mhm.
At that time, there is no any consciousness that is, that known that he was poisoned. So when you go to the restaurant, you eat something, the food was not really taste very good, and then you come back at home, and maybe stay 2-3 hours, then your stomach, something,
Mhm.
but then there's something wrong with that food. That remember.
Mhm.
So they both say you remember. Now I remember, right? This is the food poisons. So the remember, not necessarily you have to perceive that earlier. So that's the one of the thing. And then the second thing is to remember, remembering like you have seen the car, or you have seen you have seen something, new car. And then you remember that, I have seen that in that place. So for that, you don't need self-cognizers. At the time of that is consciousness, no need to perceive it. Because with the object, you remember that you have experienced. You experience that. With object, you remember the subject, right? So each thing to remember, you don't need. That is precede any perceptions in the past.
I'm not following. I'm not following this.
I'm not following, or you don't want to follow?
No, I want to follow. Definitely, I want to follow. But what do you think? I don't want to follow. If I don't want to follow, I won't be here.
Because you're a fellow.
It sounds to me contrived or made up, because if you don't have an awareness of a perception, how can you remember something you hadn't awareness? You had no awareness. Someone hit me over the head, and I went unconscious. I was in a coma. Then 6 months later, I came out of my coma. How am I might have some very rudimentary, just some slight indication that something hit me. I might barely remember, if I even remember it. It's even questionable I'll remember that. How am I going to remember a perception I was not aware of? Let's give another example.
Okay, that was corrosion.
Let's say I'm completely zoned out. That happens. I get zoned out. My mind is somewhere else. I'm not even aware. This happens to people driving too. Oh, God. My mind went off. I was thinking, gee, what did I just pass the last 5 minutes on the road? this happens.
Yeah.
It happens, I think, to most everyone. For most people, if not everyone. How can you remember something you weren't even aware of perception? Because it seems to me, your mind only follows one thing at a time. It follows a thought. When we're driving and we're zoned out, there must be some slight level of perception. Otherwise, we would have crashed into something, right? We at least knew we were driving behind another car. Even we're thinking of something. We don't remember what we're driving by. We don't remember what was on the road the last 5 miles. It doesn't really seem correct for me that you can remember something when you had no perception of it. And that's what it seems. If I understand you, that's what you're explaining or saying. But it doesn't ring true for me.
Archaeologists, they remember many things from, finding the, from the, how's that, digging, what do you call it?
Sites, archaeological sites.
Archaeological sites. So they talk, oh, that was happened, that happened. They remember so many things. So without preceding any perceptions, they have realized or perceived anything in the past. And the doctors, when diagnosis, they're checking on your bloods, and he remember, oh, you have this, a few years back you have something, and then they can trace back to how that happens. So remembers, we also conventionally, ordinarily, we also says, now I remember that was happened at the time when I was doing something, right? So something that at that time you are doing, you don't really realize this may cause something, right? So and then later on you remember something, and that the event, that remembering that, and you also remember another things that also happened at the time, right?
But,
so that's very, very simple, this mundanely we say that, right? For example, as I mentioned, when you go to the restaurant, have the lunch, and you don't feel like it's right, or there's some smell or something, it looks something, and then you just eat it anyway. And then after 2-3 hours, your stomach, the problems, and then you say, oh, that food poisons. Oh, now I remember there was food poison from that restaurant. So when did you realize that you have food poisons? If you don't realize in the past that you have food poison, how can you remember? How can you say, I remember there was poison at that time?
It sounds like a lot of it is almost, there was no perception in the past, but in the present you can infer based on what was perceived.
Yeah, something that happened, and then you infer, or this thing is also happened at the time, it started that time,
This, I'm sorry, I have to really disagree on this one. There's been so much research on this. There's even an academic name, plus there's ordinary experience too. And that academic name is false memory syndrome. People remember things that, for example, there's been so much research on this. There were many legal cases over this. People imagined they were molested, and their imagination created that. Or the other day, who did I mix up? Gary Cooper and what was? You start to conflate things, two things. As time goes on, you don't remember accurately. This person is a little like this person. Maybe they're both very charming. You remember the wrong one, not you remember the incorrect one. Well, maybe add some similarity. So there's so much research now on memory and how distorted memory is. It is just an incredible amount of research. So I'm sorry, I can't believe it just because the book says it's so. I don't think it's correct. I'm not trying to be stubborn. I just think that the evidence does not support this.
So I lost one word.
The evidence does not
I can be
support it.
president. I've rested the word. I lost one word. so,
I found it for you to support. The evidence does not support this.
Okay. You take back your word. So anyway, so right now we are not talking about how correct the remember is. We are talking about, yes, you can remember things from remembering something else. So we are just talking about how it is possible that you can remember. Now, the mind-only school says, without having perceived or realized that in earlier, it is impossible to remember. The Prasangika school says they are not talking about remember, memory is correct or incorrect. So it is possible by remembering, having bit in the winter time, and also remember at that time you are poisonous. While you are bit, you don't remember. You don't really realize. While you are eating in the restaurants, you don't realize you have food poison. But remember the eating that food, and then you got the poisons. So this is just very simple. We are not talking about making declarations. It is possible or not. So the mind-only school says, without having perceived anything in the past, it is not possible to remember that thing. So therefore, it is required there is the self-cognizers. Object, yes, you remember because there is the subject which is perceiving that object, therefore you remember. The subject also remember with the object. The mind-only school says subject has to be another subject which is perceiving at the time. So that is,
The subject, and then there's another one.
Yeah.
And then,
so it's almost like layers, the subject. Eye consciousness, the manifest, it is another layer on the top of the eye consciousness, which is only looking at the eye consciousness, not seeing the color or the shape. So the self-cognizers, this mind-only school things, it is only perceived this consciousness. If the self-cognizers perceive the color, then there's a two-eye consciousness.
Are they saying that mind only is saying that without self-cognizer, you can't remember?
Yeah. So self-cognizer is for there to remember the subject. Consciousness, eye consciousness there to remember the object.
so the self-cognizer should be equated to like the mental consciousness, right? Like in terms of like the elements, like the wind element and the fire element, or like the earth element. It shouldn't be equated to like the same.
No.
Right.
The self-cognizer is the consciousness.
Right.
It is the consciousness in the separate from the subject that is simultaneously functioning.
Right.
Is a separate. self-cognizer of the eye consciousness, self-cognizer of the nose consciousness, the air consciousness, the tongue consciousness, mental consciousness. It's almost like a double airplane. It's always flying. You know?
Like a watcher.
Uh-huh.
So it's like a watcher.
Yeah, it's watcher. There's something like that. So why they really mind-only school come up with this idea? Because mind-only school thinks that, you know, you know, the subject, when you remember the object, at the same time you remember the subject. So the Prasangika school thinks that, because they think everything is functioning independently. So now eye consciousness is independently functioning, independent object of the color. Now, to eye consciousness to remember, there's another independent consciousness to perceive that independently. So the mind, Prasangika school says everything is relatively. You remember object, at the same time you remember the subject. So you don't need another subject to perceive at the time of that, you know, you are experiencing the object. Then you don't need that because everything relatively.
So it sounds like they're saying that there is a consciousness that is separate from the subject, separate from it,
Yeah,
but it's still related to it.
still related, attached.
So it's just like, well, why is it there? How is it related to the subject in that way?
Sometimes you see some airplane, there's another airplane
refilling.
attached to it. So two airplanes, you know, attached. Yeah.
Okay.
When the airplane is flying, the fuel is empty, then another airplane that start flying and pull it. So the Prasangika school says this is all because you have, you know, because you believe everything is intrinsically, everything is inherently, right, independently functioning. So the function is not independent; it's relatively. So the Prasangika school says we reject this kind of self-awareness, you know, or self-cognitions. So rejecting the foundation consciousness, rejecting the reflexive awareness or the self-cognition, rejecting the use of the autonomous syllogism to engender of the view of the suchness in others. So again, medieval autonomous schools, mind-only schools, even the Sautrantika schools, when they use the logic, reasoning, syllogism reasonings, they also think that, you know,
That an intrinsic such
Yeah.
in others.
the intrinsic, you know, all of this subject, predicate, and the reasonings are all intrinsic. So if the subject, predicate, and the reasonings are three sets, if it's not intrinsic, so if it's not intrinsic, there is no possible to constitute, you know, what you are trying to establish. So the subject, the predicate, all of them separately, you know, intrinsically exist. So the Prasangika school says, with intrinsic subject, predicate, and the reasonings, you cannot, you know, understand. In this way, you cannot understand emptiness, because the emptiness is the absence of intrinsic natures. How can you understand the emptiness through, you know, intrinsic subject, predicate, and reasoning? But this part is very difficult. Yeah, for me, it's so how, you know. If Prasangika school says, if you have intrinsic chai, I cannot drink it. But if you put on the table, even the Prasangika school can pick the chai and drink it. But for them is intrinsic. For Prasangika school, It's not intrinsic. So the logic is the logic, and you think is intrinsically in the subject and the predicate and the reasonings, but still it can function to constitute something, whatever you are trying to establish. So the Prasangic school, but still this is, we reject the autonomous syllogism to engender of the view of the suchness in others. So the Prasangic school point is, as long as you have this mind that is, constantly, holding on the intrinsic nature in the phenomena, and there's no way you can, how many times you use the logic, no way you can understand the suchness. That's the kind of point. So yeah, the from the memory, the precise mind only school assert there is self-cognizer. The Prasangic schools, from the memory, there's no necessary self-cognizer. Without self-cognizers, without having any subject, the time of the subject, another subject is perceiving something. Because by remembering the object, you can remember the subject. Right? I saw it, without this, how's that? Yeah. So I have seen it. I saw it means, what you see, the object. And then when you remember this object is I have seen, so which means you have experienced in the past. You have perceived that in the past. So what makes you to remember that you have already seen in the past? Because of the object that is, second time comes to the mind, repeatedly coming to the mind. So it is repeating in the mind that notions, remember, that I have already seen.
So when it comes to, that makes me think of how if someone were to say, I see, just I see, not like I see a specific object.
Yeah.
In my head, that makes me think, oh, well, there is no object, because it's almost like they're just saying, I see. But it's almost like that sentence implies that there still has to be something that is being seen, like an object, right? Like, even if they don't see it, I don't know if that makes sense, because I guess it makes me think like that.
So we are talking about the memory, how you remember.
Right.
So what do you remember things? How do you call it? I remember. So the one particular object repeatedly appears to the mind, or the mind that understands this object is repeated. So that's called memory. You have remember. So with this one object that keep repeating in your mind, then this is I remember, and the time, and also you remember something else with that repeating. So remember that to remember something, right? To remember something, there must be some object that is to keep repeating in your mind. And then every part of that you remember is not necessary it has repeated. Like, food that eating in the restaurant, that is repeating, right? Repeating in the mind. And then again, that also reminds you, at the time, although the time of that I was eating, I don't really realize it was poison, right? But now I remember there was already poison at the time. Yes, Larry. You want to say something else? So yeah, sometimes you use in a conversation, we say that, oh, is that, sometimes, if some astrologist explain to you, or that specific day and this time, and whoever has born this, how's that? This is the sign of that thing. When astrology and the tells you about the sign, and then you remember, oh, so which means this keep happening with me because of that. I was born at that time too, right? There's something another remembers, right? So remember, every part that you remember is not necessarily you have realization of that thing in the past. So that's the Prasangya school point. But still, to remember, something has to be repeated. So, yeah. And then accepting external realities' existence to the same extent as one accepts the existence of the consciousness. So the Prasangya school says, like eye consciousness is conventional reality, and the color that is experienced or the apprehended by the eye consciousness is also the external, is a conventionally external reality. So if there is the external conventional reality, there is the eye consciousness which is perceiving external object. So Prasangya school thinks they accept, yes, there is external, because the Buddha says, the form, sound, smell, taste is, conditioned. It's a condition by the great four elements, which is something other than the consciousness. So therefore, it is the I think that is the reason. So to accept there is the external form, external sound, external smell, external taste, external textures. Because these, if there is no element, the great elements is not involved to form the color or sound or smell or taste, then you can say, all color, sound, smell, taste are manifest from the consciousness within. So if all of them are not manifest within the consciousness, so then is it something the conditioned by the outer element? The great element has some contributions to form the color, sound, smell, taste. So therefore, there is the external. So number 5, accepting that even Sharvaka and the Pratika Buddhas realize the selflessness of phenomena. So these are the unique from other school. Prasangya school says realization, emptiness, self of phenomena, right? Empty of self of phenomena. Not only bodhisattvas or bodhisattvas. This has to be realized by Sharvaka and the Pratika Buddha, because this is the only path that can eliminate the afflictive emotions. So, which means other school of thought, they divided emptiness into emptiness of the person, emptiness of the phenomena. So the emptiness of the person is for to eliminate the afflictive emotions. Emptiness of the phenomena to eliminate the obscuration of knowledge. So which means to clean up the residue, the how's that? Imprints of the afflictive emotions.
Are Shravakas, are they solitary learners?
Pratika Buddha is solitary, solitary.
And the Pratika Buddha, is that pure Buddha?
Pratika Buddha is solitary realizers. Shavaka is the harrier.
Oh, okay.
Harrier school.
Opposite.
Harrier and the solitaries, two things, right? Sharvaka, wak means sound, who listens.
Did you relate the external with the elements? That's what I mean. It seems to me both external and internal are related to elements, right? I mean, whether you believe everything is an internal projection or you believe the external exists separately, the elements are involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Elements are always involved. How the so-called external interacts with the external elements and internal elements, maybe they react in some way I can't even begin to visualize. But I still just I mean I get how we don't need kleshas or imprints to explain effect and function of karma. I get that part. But I don't yet get why there has to, maybe I'm a mind-only guy, I don't know.
Yeah.
Seems I had a Karmapa thing, a thing by one of the Karma, I know I did. And he seemed to be in the mind-only school in this one I read.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Karmapa, you are the really, party guy. You always look for the party, which party I belong to. So.
No, I'm not teaching all the lineages, all of them. So
yes, Karmapa, yeah. Karmapa.
I'm not choosing parties at all.
Yeah.
I'm looking for what makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for what makes sense. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't have a loyalty to any group.
Loyalty is not good.
No, I'm very disciplined in that. But just want to know what makes sense. That's all.
Yeah.
I just want to know what makes sense. And I still don't see the convincing. I'm not saying it's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that.
Yes.
I'm saying it seems to me I haven't seen clearly the argument for why there has to be an external. I mean, it seems to me everything can be an internal projection, and that's the external.
Yeah.
Because it's a projection. I don't get the argument why it has to be otherwise than the internal world is projected. I don't see the convincing logic.
Yes,
Maybe there's a convincing logic, but I don't get it.
That's very good. That was excellent, So you have confirmed that so everything is projections, manifest. So you say, in the mind-only school, so we tell mind-only school in the dream, you can dream the greenhouse, to paint that greenhouse, you don't need hire someone to paint, because that painting is manifest from your mind. When you wake up, you see your house. To paint that, you need to buy the paint from the Home Depot. You have to hire someone. If there is no external, you don't need anything from the external condition. And then another thing is, your house is a manifest from your mind. So there's something that manifests from your mind is the nature of your mind. How can someone interested in your house, and that person says, oh, it's also a manifest from my mind, and the house is part of my mind. So the one house become, the nature of the house owner, and everyone guests come, they also experience that house. So this is the kind of, you say, like a temple. When you go to the temple, every temple that you go, that temple is manifest from your mind. Now you see someone, the strangers coming into your mind, so to pay homage to the image of the Buddha. So it's kind of, there's a little bit uncomfortable. It's not fitting. If the house is just manifested in your mind, is a part of your mind, is the nature of your mind, and now how can you let others? How can some thief come into your mind?
Okay, here's my argument against that. I don't dispute that there is a qualitative difference, conventionally speaking, between dream state and waking state. I don't dispute there is a qualitative difference, and that things happen in our dream state different than our waking state.
Yeah.
But my argument is, when you wake up, in terms of not conventionally speaking, when you become enlightened, you wake up from samsara altogether.
Oh, that's...
Then the waking state, you find, is also a dream. So I don't dispute that there's...
It's a double awakening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. That's, yeah. I think this is like more like Mission Impossible. When you're awake from sleeping. At the same time, you're awake from samsara. Oh, samsara was so boring. So now it's when you follow the sutra, the Buddha, explicitly mentioned the 5 sensory objects like form, sound, smell, taste. Buddha says, and we call geche. 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 So there's two syllables. Gewa means being born. Chewa means it's spread or kind of expanded. So that how this called form, sound, smell, taste, like geche. So not only it produces the consciousness, it expands to the mind, then discrimination awareness, the contact, the feeling, and all kind of emotions that, expanding, expanding in the result, because just by looking at one physical form, and that produces the consciousness first, not only to remain there, and it expand the contact, the feeling, discrimination awareness, and attachment, and then all kind of emotionals, and then leave the imprints. So it endless cycles there. So that's what we call is the geche. The form is a suji geche. Sound is dai geche. Just from like one sound, and when you look at the result, how it really, connecting. And then almost like the whole oceans, the endless, cycles that are happening because of the one sound, because of the one image, one form, because of the one smell, because of one taste. So within the consciousness, there's so many things happening. So that's why now why it get chance, why it produced eye consciousness? Why is this? Why not use the eye consciousness produced the color? Why say color produced eye consciousness? Color is the cause which produced the consciousness. So that's why it's gewa. If the color is producing, how? By casting its image or the aspect to the consciousness. And how the color casts its aspect to the eye consciousness? By casting its image to the sense power, the experience by the consciousness. Then it says, Chepa. Already first the image they cast to the sense power reflects in sense power, and then continues expanding consciousness, the contact, the feeling, discriminative awareness. So that's why it called Geche. So when the Buddha says Chirugi Geche, external, this form and sound and smells are caused by the great four elements. The four elements, as you mentioned, the internal four elements and outer four elements. Internal four elements, like the air that you breathe in and out, and the heat, and the moistures, and then the solidities, the earth elements. So from the contact of that, and it produces, color, sound, smell, taste. So the Prasangika school is saying that yes, is a part of the color is part of the color is conditioned by the elements, and then it's the elements and the sense power. Element and the sense power. And element and the sense power means is not directly in the contact of the element and sense power, because the sense powers, eye sense power could not see the element, nor seeing the water, nor seeing the heat, nor seeing the solidities. So if the eye consciousness, no way it can have the direct access to the element, so now they say from the elements, they formed in some kind of molecule or the particles and the collection of the particles. Now, because of the collection of particles, there's something has formed, and then the light hits on that form, and then it reflects the image to the sense power. So there's so much function going on outside of the consciousness, right? And then once they reflect the image to the sense power and experienced by the consciousness, then there's eye consciousness. When there's eye consciousness, there's the feeling and discrimination awareness and attentions, intentions, all of them. So the Prasangika school, the external means, simply because it is produced from the great element, four great elements. That is the only Prasangika schools is external. Prasangika school do not, they assert any external as something located in somewhere in inherent basis. So my knowledge school, this is the best example is the dream. Like dream, in the dream, what you see, what you smell, what you taste, and all of them, not external. Exactly in the daytime, what you see and smell and hear the sound, they do not have any external quality. So then this is, and how this eye consciousness, in that case, the eye consciousness and the color has to be simultaneously born. And minority school says, yes, that just, at the same time, simultaneously. And how that's possible? Or there's like one seed, from the one seed, it manifests two leaves and separately. So one side manifests the consciousness, one side is the object. For the one seed, it has born simultaneously. That's what they say. So it's very much looks like the dream object. The dream, when you dream, the object and the consciousness simultaneously manifest. There is no dream object is no different from the dream consciousness. It's a part of that. So how can you say in the daytime, the color that you see, the sound you hear, all of them like a dream object? There's nothing has produced from any external cause. So yes, Larry.
This is a little bit off the subject, but also would relate in terms of how mind-only school explains this and how Prasangika school explains this. Because we're talking now about, externally speaking, about how the organ interacts with the external environment. But how do they both explain? Because I know they both talk about this, but I don't know how. They talk about clairvoyance and clairaudience. And they still talk about clairvoyance in terms of the eye and clairaudience in terms of the ear. So that means they're saying there's like an inner eye or something, or inner ear, that has the capacity to see things over a long distance. You know what clairvoyance is, right?
Oh, clairvoyance. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, clairvoyance and clairaudience.
Yes.
So, it sounds like they both think maybe they would explain it different, but I suppose the mind-only school will say there's not only an external eye, there's an internal eye. Maybe, I don't know if that's what they say.
So why you say the internal eye, like your finger?
And Prasangika must have its own explanation. And somehow the elements must enter into all this stuff too. So how do both schools explain? Now we're talking about that's kind of a non-ordinary perception that they both accept. It's still dualistic, I think. I think it's still dualistic, right? If I can hear May talk in Nebraska, or something like that. How do they explain that? Both schools. Do they look at does Prasangika say this is functional, it's karmic or non-karmic, or free of karma? How can it even function?
Yeah, I think in simple and normal language, we say like elephants, like human and animals. When it comes to the sensory kind of the sensory perceptions, how sharp the animals, the sensory experience. right? That does not mean the human being has not the same, potential to sense like an animal. Because the human beings is more, their minds are more kind of, I was heavily, kind of rely on that, the emotional image. So that blocks our sense, the sharpness of the sensory experience. Sometimes, if someone who's stay kind of meditations for a long time, they have maybe more access to experience the sensual object from the distance much longer, like animal have. Like elephant, they can sense through their for legs or hands, right? They can sense things from the 2 miles or 3 miles, something happening, right? Something, their group coming or something is happening. So it's not because of the human being lacks these qualities. The human being, we suppress these qualities because we are too much seeing, interacting with our own image and mental projections. So the animal has less of the quality, so they rely on the sensor. So the more they can extend that quality. So the clairvoyance is something that is through the single-pointed meditations, they kind of give the, generates the potential in this sensual experience, and like they can experience some kind of vibrations, like from the distance, like a mile or 2 miles or 3 miles, because the sound is kind of a dependent originations or dependent arising, which arises which I think is in the relation of the air drum and the wave of the molecule, something. So if you enhance the quality of the sensual experience, so you can feel the air drum through the air drum, your own air drum, and the wave, from the far away. So that's the kind of the clairvoyance, what's the clairaudience, right? So you can hear many. Yeah. So that's kind of only that the clairaudience is to give the potential or enhancing the quality of the sensual experience through the concentrations, meditations. Yeah, and that sometimes people says that when people get older, some old people, they lose some air, they kind of hearing, and they're sharpening the eye. Some the nose. So kind of the power, there's something goes shifted, and here and there. The power is there. Now, if there is the power, and if you enhance the quality of this, so here the cause of that is and in many of the sutra this is the single pointed meditation, the concentrations. More you single pointed meditate, through that meditation, you shift the quality in that sense power, and you can hear very far, and you can see things. Even there is the mountains that blocks that thing, but you can see through the mountain. So yeah, and then Siddhantic school, this is not only you're seeing like with eye, it's seeing more like the mental consciousness. And Prasangic school, and many of this is yes, it's an eye sense power. because I sense power. I sense power. It can catch the image. Sense power catch the image, not because of the sense power itself, because of the power of the mental state. So anyway, we can just imagine, hypothetically, we can say that, once we have gained this kind of quality, and again, it's hard to explain, how I listen this. But you see that in a normal way, the animal in human beings, animal has more kind of sharp in that sense than the human being. Now, say, why is that? Yeah. So here is the reason here is saying that the human beings are focusing too much in the mental state, and that suppresses the quality of the sensual experience. So the animals, they have they don't have much quality to imagine, and many like futures things in the past, remember it a long time. So they rely on what presently happening through the sensual experience. So they have more sharp, in the sensual experience, the less in the mental state. So if the mind is too much talking, your sense become, deaf. But the main point is here, the Prasangika school thinks that those sound, the smell, taste, the form is not manifest from the consciousness. Is not manifest to consciousness. That does not mean there's any contribution from the mind, mental state. So the contributions here is, sound to arising of the sound has something to do with eardrum. Eardrum to experience again the consciousness there. Without consciousness, but simply by the eardrum cannot really have any effect from the sound. Sometimes too much focus on something, how much the noise there's, you could not hear anything. But in the Kiddu Rinpoche, Lama Tsongkapha says, yes, if you're single point in meditating, the sound that you hear, yes, you have a sense of that sound. You experience the sound, but there is no, discriminations of what kind of sound. It is the sound of the car or the sound of the airplane. That, the attention is not there. But still, that you can hear the sound. But some meditations says they could not hear anything, because the one, I remember the one was from one of my teachers. When he talked about the Lama Rinpoche, Tenzi Genzen. So the master who gave the guide to the Bodhisattva teaching His Holiness. So my teacher always, I think like said a month or 2 months, Lama Rinpoche stay in his house. So when Rinpoche Lama was reading, there was someone always playing guitar outside, then kind of singing a song, and he was always concerned this maybe he disturbed his his study, and he closed the window. So Kunarma said, "Oh, it's okay." When I'm not focusing, it's good. It gives me relax. When I focus, I could not hear the sound. So maybe he's saying he could not hear the sound. It's a guitar or anything, or the sound is not bothering him. So what is meant by saying I could not hear? Not hearing the sound at all, or so we need to interpret that. If he means that sound is not hearing at all, not hearing at all. So how it's possible the wave is keep knocking the air drum, but you are not being able to generate the air consciousness. So what is inside your mind that blocks the hearing the sound? When you open your eye and your single point meditations, you see things, people moving. And if the single point meditations is so powerful that hijacks all the sense consciousness, but you have no notion of the person or anything, that this thing is just happening there, but there is no attention to anything to discriminate what is that. But the image has to be there. Right? The image has to be there. But no attention. I think the no attention is one of the reasons. So, yeah, so accepting that even the Sharvaka and the Pratika Buddhas realize the selfness of the phenomena, accepting that grasping at the self-existing of phenomena is a form of the afflictions. So this is also one of the uncommon to the other school, Prasangika schools, grasping a self-existing of phenomena and persons, both are afflictions. Is a delusional thing, delusional mind. So other than the Prasangika school, all these mind-only school and autonomous schools, they think the grasping of self-existing of phenomena is just ignorance. It's not a delusion. The grasping of self, a person, is delusion and ignorance. So the external is something like external phenomena is there's this very strange kind of assertion from the mind-only school, because this like a color that I see is manifest from my imprints. So anything that it manifests the imprints, it is not the common object, because my imprints, reflection of my imprints, only appears to me. That cannot appear to you. Your imprint, the reflections, is only appears to you. Now it says the things that I see outside, all of them, the reflection of my imprints. How can we have a common object? We both can see things. So that everything is imprints reflects. Then there is no common object. Like temple that is the reflects from the imprints of the the person who is in the temple, and then the outsider could not see it because he was seeing the reflection of his imprints. And the Prasangika school, in my own school, there's imprints. There's three kind of. One imprints that's like imprints is the continuum of the consciousness. The consciousness, like seeing, color, sound, smell, taste. That is the from the imprints of that, and again seeing the color, sound, smell, taste. And then second imprint is we call ngombarjaban, expression, the kind of narrative things, like, oh, this is the horse, this is the cow, this is the man, this is the elephants. That kind of the the appearing the basis of label. That is one of the imprints. By saying, labeling many times, that repeated in your mind. So that everything that appears to you as the basis for label is the one of the imprints. The third imprint is, those wrong perceptions keep repeating in your mind. Then the object that, non-existing object that seems to be, existing to you. Like if the person's out of angles, the person is 100% negative. Out of attachment, it's 100% positive. And then there's independent self, self-sufficient I. So these are the imprints that reflects imprints from the wrong perception. So the color, sound, smells is the reflection of the imprints, but it is not the not the imprints that manifest as expressions, not the wrong perceptions. But the point is, everything that you see is sound, is imprint reflects. And then that is all it is, says, it cannot be common object. Your imprints, the manifestations, cannot be experienced and seen by other people. So Prasangika has to be, and Manoni school has to be, finally they agree that, color that I see, you don't see. You see, I don't see. We don't have a common object. So how can the minority school say, oh, come and go and see that, beautiful flowers? When minority school says, you go and you're separated. So I see my own garden, you see your own, because we don't have common flower, right?
You said about imprints, I think you said that they don't have to be coming from ignorance.
Yeah.
Is that correct? But I don't quite understand that, because our hearts, they still have some residual imprints. And when you become a Buddha, I think there's no imprints left, right? So it seems that it seems to me that with imprints, there always has to be some level of obscuration that block you from seeing clearly. It's true, some are more subtle and less, you could say, contaminating of perception or understanding. But isn't it correct that there's a whole range of obscuration? And as long as there's imprints, there's some level of obscuration.
So I think that's called the first imprints they manifest like color, sound, smell, taste. Those manifest from the imprints. The first imprints, second imprints from the expressions, third imprints the wrong perceptions, right? So the minority school, this is everything that you see, is always manifest from the imprints. Now that goes, how about the Buddha? When the Buddha sees the color, sound, smell, taste, experience, does Buddha have any dual experience, in the perceptions of the color and the sound, and smell, and taste? So that then there's two minority schools divided in two. One minority school is no, Buddha has no dual experience, and one other minority school says yes. Even in the Buddha, enlightened, when you engage in the color, sound, smell, there's always dual experience, which means there is, that kind of, there's a dual experience. We call it chunang. There's a chunang is illusion. Even the illusion experience still with the Buddha, but this cannot be deceived. So it cannot be, this cannot be conditioned to deceive the Buddha or to generate any of the wrong perception. So this is minority school says that even the Buddha, because when you got enlightened, you see things, you smell things, you hear things, you have a 5 sense power. So that anything that's through the sense power you experience, everything has to be manifest from the imprints, because you have denied the outer elements has nothing to do with what you see and what you smell. So if there is nothing from outside of the mind, there's only mind, and then the mind sees its own imprints. So this is like almost like a cow is milking cow himself. So that milk is a cow has to drink its own cow. So how can the cow goes his head to drink his milk? So that's why, the minority school, by rejecting the external, and minority school, the reason is why they reject the external things. Then this is the particles. If there is hypothetical, there is the particles, collection of the particles. Particle is not visible to the sense power. It cannot be object of the sense power. And 2 particles, 3 particles, 1,000 particles, because it's it's kind of it's too because the too settled, that cannot be viewed, that cannot be imagined, okay, that cannot be seen by the sense power, because therefore the color is not the collection of the particles. Sound is not the collection of the particles. And smell is not the collection of particles. Particles have not built the form of color, sound, smell, taste. Sometimes that makes sense. So even the scientific thinking that this is the wave of the sound. The wave of the sound, the wave itself has no sound. The wave that connect to the eardrum, and there is sound. So the smell, the molecule of the smell. So the molecule themselves, there is no smell at all. But when it connects to the no sense powers, and then there's a smell. So one part, the minority school says it's true because there's nothing, there's no such color of the sound, the smell within the particles of the molecules. That's true. Because of that, and you totally deny the external object is too much. You can only say, there is no the form, sound, smell, which is inherent in any the molecule or the particles. That part may be true, but depending upon those particles, the molecules, then with contact with the sense powers, with relation to the sense powers, and something arises, dependent arises. So like minority school thinks that, yesterday was Saturday, so when Saturday ceased, and that's end of the Saturday is non-existing of the Saturday. So that is too much. You can say is the end of the Saturday, but end of the Saturday, it's for you, it's become non-existing of the Saturday. How can non-existing Saturday follow by the Sunday? Why not Monday comes there before the Sunday? When the cause ceased, when the Bali seed ceased to exist, and that is become the non-existing of the Bali seed. And then this is like non-existing of the rice seed, non-existing of barley seed. This is non-existing of the gold seed. So like, non-existing of the rice seed is not going to produce the barley sprout. Why non-existing barley seed is producing the barley sprout? So they're all kind of, miscalculations, disintegrations for them is non-existing. For the Prasangika schools, the disintegrations and of the Saturdays are not a non-existing. These are the conditional things. The cause ends is beginning of the effect. So the very time of the cause being ceased, it is the time of the effect to manifest. So how can that be non-existing? When the milk ceases to become the yogurt, and that is the time of the yogurt, it is not the non-existing of the milk. When the person died, and this is not the non-existing of the person, that is the time the person has born somewhere. He becomes something. So it's not being able to understand the dependent arising, in a more settled way. They do not understand that. So then they mess up with time, they mess up with, external object. So some of the Prasangika schools say they even heard, there's a fear when the Prasangika school says nothing intrinsically exists. They think it's total nihilism. So they have to think something substantial, anything that's independent. So like non-Buddhist who believes in Atmas is also because of the Atma is what caused them to believe there is the permanent I that remain continuously. Because they think when the body, the five aggregates, ceased to exist, it died, and that death is the end. it has become non-existing. Now, to continue, with what condition it can continue? So then, for that reason, there we are going to hold on the permanent I. So, like Mindfulness School says, the karma that you acted in this life, when you die, or just right after the karma, and it ceases to exist, that cessation is end. So, what can carry this karma? So then they have said there is the mind basis all. Although the karma has become non-existing, but remain the potential, the seed within the consciousness. I think that's why, in the old time, through the story, and it gives a good impression of the people, like, say, to make people believe in the law and cause and effect, make people believe to affiliate of the negative actions. It says, oh, there's the God, or there's the Lord of the dead. So one day he will come, he will check, and he will, investigate what you have done. So I think this gives them some kind of, idea to, forcefully believing in the law and cause and effect out of fear. So this is mind-only school, mind basis, or non-Buddhist school, Atma, and the Vairashika school, the Prapti, like, they're like a bank slit. They're all kind of, makes you believe without any reasons, give some kind of idea to you continuously has to follow the law and cause and effect. It is not the reason, it's not a logic. It is the conditions, give you the image of something.
I have a question about the name of this chapter is The Merits of Negation. And I guess this implies that understanding has merit and negation of things that are untrue clarifies understanding, and that's how merit develops. But are there different categories of merits?
Yeah, this is just English merits. It's just the beneficial, This is English merit. So the merits, the collection.
I see.
Yeah. So that you see that some merits are just English merit. Language.
So we should just maybe replace it with benefit.
Yes. The benefit.
Okay.
Some in the school, they says based on the merit, you can get the scholarship. So it does not mean, and you have accumulated some kind of positive karma.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
So I think there's so many things that we should, constantly reflect upon, like the way the minority school, what makes them believe that there is the mind basis of all, and what is the condition they have to say there is no external object. So this is very important. What makes them believe that mind basis of all is because the past of the karma is non-existing. So the karma, what you have, committed, is something that remains, something not really become non-existing. Because the past of the karma is non-existing. Because they're all things, future in the past, non-existence. Now, when you are acting that positive karma or negative karma, and there's the pictures, the image already captured in the mind basis all. This is all because that mind basis all is always, one life after another life that goes. So you have the record, what you have done. So this is, and this is not different from what non-Buddhist school thinks, like the Bhagavan and the Lord of the Dead. And the Lord of the Dead he has a secretary. The Lord of the Dead is there and he's secretary. And then every time Lord of the Dead orders, this such person is now going to die tomorrow. I have to send people to bring his soul. And then the secretary will check what kind of positive karma he has done. So what negative karma is done. And then he scale on that. So this kind of, because when the persons die, it becomes non-existing. The death is non-existing for them. Now who will decide? So they have to come up with some kind of, Lord of the Dead or the Bhagavans. And like similar, Mindfulness school says, the karma that you are doing on the surface, and there's another camera that can catch the picture. So our hard drive, there's a hard drive recorded. So this continues, goes next life. So the past is non-existing. So I think that forced them to make this kind of idea. The mind base is always there. So there are, not much different from non-Buddhist schools, have the image of the Bhagavan and the Lord of the Dead. And then more interesting, more fascinating story about the non-Buddhist school. There's more exciting stories. So Lord of the Dead. So you can, there are some certain puja that you can, request the Lord of the Dead. Please, my wife or husband was died, and please let him go. He has to live for a few months. So you can ask him. And sometimes you will say, yes, okay. So the question is sent back to the dead body, and they say, So Lord of the Dead says, I can remain, 2 years. I got a visa 5 years. So if the mind base is all, there is no prayer to the mind base all to ask him, right? So it's in you.
This idea of puja, in Tantra, puja and Tantra actually sounds like a deity practice with a Bhagavan. Tantra is supposed to be a higher yana than Madhyamika supposed to be. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm just saying in the sort of map of the yanas. But yet, puja seems almost to have this idea of a Bhagavan with a fabricated deity. So, is this a regression? Or is the fact that you understand that you're working with a fabrication mean you're kind of liberating yourself from that false belief?
Yeah, for me, it's like, the daily practice is like very similar, like in ordinary school, when one particular students have the idea of what he wanted to be in the futures after the graduations, and his families guide him well. So you have to be doctors, and for the doctor, not only the education, you need this, and he also visualizing himself as a doctor in the futures. So for that reason, I do this, you know. In a similar Tantrayana practice, visualizing yourself in the future in the Buddha, and for that Buddha, so you have to perfect the generosities, the patience, the moralities. For that reason, you just do things to accumulation of merit. You exercise to train your wisdoms. So with creating different form, and then understanding that each forms is relatively exists, not intrinsically exists. And relatively exists means, with this substance, with these sense powers, I visualize that part of consciousness in a female deity, male deities. So these male deities, for example, if I say the wind element and sense powers. So I visualize, you visualize that wind element and the consciousness in the form of, Yamataka or Mahakala, or at the wind element in my sense consciousness, the physical sense consciousness in Tara. And that Taras, the function of that is continuous the activities, actions that dispelling the suffering of others. You visualize that, your heat elements, the heat elements, your consciousness, and transforming into another deities, like a wrathful, wrathful Tara, in the red colors with burning the fires, and then subduing all the negatives in the spirit, the power, there's negative spirits. So this is all preparing yourself, because all is not really not exist yet. It is possible. It is the future, right? So the same like when you go to school, some student, I think, like for me, like when I study, we have not much idea, right? Even I don't know what it's going to be. But some, they guide very well. You become these doctors. For that doctors, they require this one, this one, this one. And you try, exercise all of them. And when you become the doctor, then you have, well-trained, well-informed. So that's the, this is what they're doing. It's just preparing, it's a training, it is the exercise, to expand the compassion, to accumulate the merits, to, to connect to the sentient beings. Some Buddha may have less, maybe there's some have more disciples, some less disciples, some has too many disciples. So that's also depending on the Buddha's how he trained himself. Yeah. Okay. Chanju Simjo Rinpoche, Majeba Majeji, Kevanya, Memanya, Kone Kondo Pevers, Konye Tawa Rinpoche, Majeba Majeji, Kevanya, Memanya, Kone Kondo Pevers, Pama Simjan Tamjin, Dedan Denju, Yandro Tamje, Tato Toma, Chanju Simba Kana Sushi, Tada Kunji, Monom Jujuruchi, Karera Veko Shimazu, Pendante Wama Juve, Jereza, what in Zinjazo Yishebe, Sideba to Denjuruchi.
May the precious holy mind now get on the rise and grow. May the oil of no decline increase forevermore. May the precious mind realizing emptiness not yet on horizon grow. May that one have no decline but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all father and mother sentient beings have all the happiness. May all lower realms be empty forever. Wherever there are bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. O powerful Chandrakirti, intrinsic Jutsu, remain in this world with just on side hands.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Julila. At least